Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Week 4 recap, and welcome to Week 5 of English 9. I'll be covering the enrichment activities that we looked at last week, kind of walking you through the correct answers, explaining a few different items as we go along. And let's start with our school funding map. So we looked at the map on the NPR website about how schools get their money and what amount of money each school district receives every year. And let's go through some of the questions here. So number one, that was pretty easy. Pretty much everyone got that correct. Arlington spends roughly $16,000 per year per pupil in their school district. The highest and lowest spending counties in Virginia. A few people mixed up one of these answers here. So most people got the highest spending county correct, which you can scroll over here to Highland County at over $21,000 per student. But people for the second part of the question mixed up these two counties here. So if you said Warren County, you're correct. And while Jefferson County does spend just a touch more, so it's incorrect, it is also in West Virginia. You can see the borderline here between Virginia and West Virginia. So Warren County is the correct answer for that one. This I had a really wide range of student answers here. Really, it depends how carefully you looked. But the highest spending school district is a very small district out in California called Death Valley Unified School District, which you can see spends over $70,000 per student per year. And I think it's important to kind of unpack that. So how do they spend all that much money? Is it just the best school system in the world and we've never heard of it? And there are a lot of different factors at play here. So first of all, it's a very small school district. I believe we looked this up last year. I think it was only just a couple hundred kids in the whole district compared to Arlington, which is thousands and thousands of students. So you have money being divided over a smaller number of students, which gives you a higher figure, of course. And is it the case that, their teachers are making $300,000 a year? Probably not. I think another factor could be, for example, maybe there's a law in California that says, if you have a school district, you need these different municipalities, right? You need to have a soccer field, a football field, the school building itself, and all this like set list of items, and which are very high cost. And if you have those list of items for the school district and you're dividing it between that smaller number of students again, you're going to get those inflated figures, right? So, a school building that fits the smaller number of students in Death Valley is going to cost still millions of dollars, whereas a school building that fits all the students at Yorktown High School, while it also costs millions of dollars, I don't think the price difference between the two is proportional with the student difference between those two counties. So, take these figures with a grain of salt, but also keep in mind that there is a huge discrepancy between spending. It asks you about the average spending here and what you think the expenditures come from. So typically the biggest by far is teacher salaries. Right, so even though stadiums and school buildings are expensive, having to pay all of the teachers in a school building every year is also expensive, typically the highest expense. Other expenses include athletic facilities, sporting equipment. You have your HVAC, air conditioning, heating, the physical logistics of a building, the janitorial and custodial staff. You have physical textbook costs. You have online textbook subscriptions, services like Canvas, for instance, right? These aren't free. The school pays a lot of money to be able to provide its students with Canvas, with some Google items, teacher laptops. The more you think about it, really, the more you see these expenses add up that you perhaps hadn't thought about before. So how are schools funded? You saw there's a couple different answers there, one of them being from local property taxes of homes and businesses, which would mean that if you live in an area that has expensive homes and businesses that pay expensive rent, the schools in those areas are going to receive more funding because of those local property taxes. And it looked like kind of the general trend was, for the most part, a lot of people said that they didn't think this funding system seemed very fair. Some people said that they thought it made sense, but it wasn't necessarily fair. That if you happen to live in an area where local property taxes are higher, then your school gets a lot more funding and in turn usually is considered a better school system. And then lastly, our connection back to To Kill a Mockingbird. A lot of different variety and responses here. Some people said, for instance, there's racial discrimination or there's socioeconomic discrimination. Even within similar classes and similar races, we see discrimination between, parenting styles. Right, Scout goes into her classroom already knowing how to read, and she's scolded because of it. And that's not necessarily her race or socioeconomic status, but those definitely play factors. But that even can be a factor of Atticus's parenting style, choosing to teach Scout on his own at home before sending her to school. So a lot of different tie-ins with our book there. And the last thing that we did for To Kill a Mockingbird was we looked at the redneck stereotype from this excerpt here. And then we kind of took a look at if it fit in To Kill a Mockingbird. And there was a Malcolm Gladwell opinion piece about it where you read an excerpt. And you were asked to write your assessment here. Do you think Malcolm Gladwell is correct? Is Atticus a saint? Is he not a saint? Is Gladwell just looking for criticism where none exists? And I got a lot of different responses here. I think most people trended towards saying that they disagreed with Malcolm Gladwell. And some interesting answers I saw were that while Atticus's defense of Tom by attacking the Yules wasn't perfect, it was what needed to be done to accomplish a larger moral goal, right? So yes, maybe he used this redneck stereotype, but one, maybe he didn't necessarily mean to, and two, maybe it's justified if it's in the defense of an innocent man, if he's trying to save someone's life from what he knows to be an unfair and racist situation. So a lot of great responses from this week, I thought. And then lastly, we're starting our new unit on poetry, which will likely take us through the end of the school year. And there was a little anticipation guide to keep you thinking, to get you thinking about poetry, kind of get you in the mindset for it. Obviously, these are opinion-based, and there's no correct answers here. This one, though, perhaps there is a correct answer that poems do not always have to rhyme. I hope that misconception has been cleared up by now for you, but just kind of keep that in mind throughout the unit. Certain poems have set rhyme patterns, but not every single poem always has to rhyme. And then you put your name of a poet and your summary here. This is more for me just to kind of see, what people's background knowledge might be. So there's some cool poetry stuff for this week. Definitely check that out on the slides. We will look at some background information on the types of poems and types of poetry. And there's a poem that you'll watch from a YouTube video that's really powerful, I think, and you'll write your response in Canvas. And then lastly, you'll try your hand at your own poem, the I Am poem. This is a very guided, regimented poem. I think it's an easy one to start with because it's a template-based poem. So be creative in that one. There's instructions and some samples in that document as well. And we'll go over these items in a recap pretty similar to this one next week. All right, that's all I got for week 5. Send me an email if you have any questions, and I will see you later.